This would be one of those classic scenarios. While investigating and looking for something else, we stumbled onto something entirely different. The Bagwajiwini of northern Minnesota near Canada, the wild people of the forest.
So here with Mr. Ron. How are we doing today, sir?
Oh, good.
We had a eventful river trip. I think we got in about 12 miles yesterday, and we found this little peninsula to camp on. We didn't stay at the other camp. It felt funky. we
Bad vibes.
bad vibes, so we just decided to move on. Obviously, something got there before we did, and we just thought it best to find lodging elsewhere. It's a little more difficult, a few more bushes, but maybe the next time we're down, that camp area will along the river be open and nothing funky will be there. But what we're here to talk about now, and this is typical terrain for the Bagwajiwini, the little people, and that's an Ojibwa term for Bagwajiwini, which means little wild man or little forest person. But we have a pretty good picture I'm going to include in this video, and I'll also include a link to the Phantoms and Monsters article that we did. But this is something that we're looking into deeper. And what I find amazing is looking at the cranial formation of what we have in the photo and looking at the Homo floresiensis skulls that they found of the little hobbit people, they're calling them, or the little people. The skulls are almost identical. It's amazing. So this is something we're going to look a little further into. But of note, with the Phantoms and Monsters article and the digging around Ron did, I did, and Jane Rodriguez did, is a missing person, Corey Kelly, who was missing for over a year before they found his body. The Ojibwa in the area tend to blame the Bagwajiwini. And you were talking with an Ojibwa lady about something that happened to her son.
Yeah. He was returning home from a friend's house after an evening. It was just getting dark, and he was just about to his place, and he heard what he said was the most beautiful flute music he'd ever heard in his life. So he went to get closer and see where it was coming from, thinking it was a radio or somebody playing really good instrument. He wandered into the woods, and sitting on the stump or a log back in the bush was what he described as a little man, probably about 3 or 4 feet tall, all white, long white hair, playing this traditional flute. And he said he was just entranced. But he turned and looked at it, or as he's looking at it, it turned and looked at him, and it quit, and it gave him this really bad stare. So he kind of freaked out, and he beat feet for home. And over the course of the next month and a half, their whole family had nothing but problems. They were losing propane, the brakes were going out in their car, batteries were going dead, brand new batteries were going dead in their vehicles, and all electronics were wigging out and shorting. So they went and talked to one of the elder medicine men up on the res, and he said, well, what? After he heard the story, goes, well, what you did is you disturbed them, and they followed you home. So, and that's the curse you did for interrupting them. And their tradition up there is if you see one, ignore it. Otherwise, it's nothing but bad luck. Well, in order to break the curse, or whatever you want to call it, or hex is putting on them, his instructions were to whatever you're eating that night, make them a nice sized plate, full of that food, and leave it out in the woods. And don't look back, because they'll come and they'll take the offering, and then they'll leave you alone. And sure enough, about a day later, everything started working again. No more problems with their furnace, their cars weren't having any more troubles, and kids weren't sick anymore, or sickly, and everything was fine, like everything was brand new. It's just he had to break the curse because he interrupted the guy playing the flute. And so now this was related to by the guy's mother, which I work with.
We're going to get him on camera eventually, I'm sure.
Yep.
We'll talk to him. And some other folks that have had, I guess, similar encounters with these little people. And once again, the little people I'm used to are on the Navajo reservation, and those guys typically don't get much more than 18, 19 inches tall. These guys are little hobbit size, they're 2-3 feet tall in most cases.
Hello, good evening. This is Jane Rodriguez from Crypto Four Corners International. And this evening I have for you a little video blurb about little people. And by little people I mean very little. They range from 2 to 4 feet tops. These creatures are physical yet are described or could be classified as what is termed as interdimensional due to their ability to fade from view from eyewitnesses. They kind of disappear and turn invisible, or they change location altogether. These creatures are very, very mythic, and by that I mean they look like they stepped right out of the pages of a fairy tale. They look about as evil as they tend to act, most of the time. They have the long, warty nose. They're green sometimes. They look just menacing. They don't look friendly. And based on the many, many reports that I've researched, and my other fellow teammates have also researched and interviewed people who've had the experiences, what they tend to do is these Bogwajini, or Pukwudgies as they're most commonly referred to, they tend to use a form of hypnosis or trance or spell. What really struck me particularly is some of them use a flute music to influence or induce a trance on a victim. They intend to get somebody isolated. They want to hypnotize someone and get them separated from the group, or have them go walk away from their home or the campsite or what have you and go deep, deep into the woods. And the people who do make it back, now there are many reports of missing people who never get solved. The cases never get solved, and the surrounding circumstances are extremely, and when I say extremely, I mean extremely bizarre, because there's no physical evidence. Well, the people who do make it back from having these little people encounters do have missing time, or they report being extremely confused. They know what they saw was this elfish type of figure, evil elf, if you will. But they simply just don't have a grasp on their faculties. They don't know what happened. And it is certainly very scary. In the article that J.C. Johnson, myself, Lon Strickler, and Mr. Shaw all wrote together this winter about little people in northern Minnesota, that's up on phantomandmonsters.com. I put a story, a true story, what happened to an Ojibwe man hunting with his son. Well, the boy did get separated from his father, and he was lured away or kidnapped by one of these Pukwudgies, and the boy was found, thankfully, by his father, but his feet were sticking up out of a root system. So these guys prefer the natural environment, and it would seem woods. And on that article that I just mentioned, we have pictures, too, of these creatures. So it's definitely worth looking into, especially if you plan to head out into the woods and do some hunting this summer or fall, winter. Yeah, so I urge you to go check that out and keep your eyes peeled. You never know what you're going to see in the woods. Again, this is Jane Rodriguez for Crypto Four Corners International.